Everyone here, Bill Frain, CEO and Director of Liberty Defense. They provide multi-technology security solutions for concealed weapons detection in high-volume foot traffic areas and locations requiring enhanced security such as airports, stadiums, schools, and more. They've had a slew of really remarkable news lately, and I think there's some industry macros that are really pointing that this becomes a very topical story. Bill, we'll talk about it later maybe, but we got an epidemic right now with school shootings in the United States, and it shocks me just how muted the response is. It's so sad because we just become so used to it now, right? But we'll talk about that too later. But I think you got a great technology. Congrats on all your amazing news you've had lately. I'm going to come off the screen here, rip through this in 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll have some Q&A from our audience here, Bill.
Great. Thanks, Arlen. I appreciate it. Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thanks again for taking the time to join me today and learning a little bit about Liberty Defense and our HEXWAVE technology. As you can see here, again, truly next generation technology. So, I'm Bill Frain. I'm the CEO for Liberty Defense. I've been in the security space for a little over 30 years. Spent time, the majority of my career with a company called L3, which is now L3 Harris. And we had about a $500 million business in the security space, developing X-ray technology, trace technology for cargo screening, airport screening, commercial applications. And I bring it up because one of the latest technologies that we had developed was the body scanners at the airport, where you put your hands up, and that's using millimeter wave technology. It's a last line of defense for airports. And we sold 1,000 of those machines at US airports, another 1,000 globally. And the HEXWAVE technology is very similar. It is based on millimeter wave application, radio frequency, and I'll talk about that in a minute here to give you an update on the technology. But just to let you know, there is always a need and a demand for advanced technology, next generation technology, because the threats continue to evolve. The people who want to do bad things, the terrorists, international and domestic, are continuing to do bad things and be more creative. So we need to stay ahead of the game, and that's exactly what the HEXWAVE is doing. And it's a very exciting time at Liberty because we are now in sales. We've gone from the development of the technology, and we've had very successful demonstrations that we did for the past year at places of worship, at stadiums, at government buildings, at airports. We kind of ran the gamut in the market vertical to be able to get enough of an evaluation so we could finalize the hardware configuration, but more importantly, the software, which is algorithm-driven and AI-driven capability. And we got to that point in March of this year. We started selling, as I mentioned. We're building the first units here in our Boston office, and we'll be shipping the first 2 units out to Los Alamos National Labs next week. So obviously a very exciting time. We've turned that corner. We're now into commercialization. So I mentioned the Boston office, which is our headquarters. We also have a small engineering facility in Atlanta. And then we have our investor relations team based out of Vancouver with years of experience working in the investment community and supporting the business. Clearly, we can talk about the need. It's not only guns that are growing, but the amount of violent acts that have been happening, it's almost daily, especially here in the States, but in Canada as well. They're now discovering and having raids where they're finding thousands of 3D printed guns and ghost guns. So people are continuing to do things that could do harm, again, at public places wherever we go. We've developed the technology. We have the exclusive technology from exclusive license, from MIT Lincoln Labs, which is right here in Boston. And we are very fortunate to have the team in place that has already done this, designed it, developed, and sold it. So the president and CTO, Mike Lanzaro, he was the VP of engineering at L3 that did all the design for those technologies that brought them to life and grew the business to $500 million. And now we have a lot of those engineers in place to help support and do the technology drive for the HEXWAVE capability. So I won't go through this. I think we all know what's happening, and threats are truly at an all-time high. And again, we are getting approached by, casinos, by hospitals, courthouses, prisons. There's new demands, new requirements that are coming out. So it's almost on a daily basis that we're getting requests for the technology. And so you can see a picture here. So it's a walkthrough capability. It's contactless, which is very important kind of post-COVID. And you don't have to divest your common items like your keys, your wallets, or your cell phone. And actually, you don't have to take your jacket off. So if you have a sweater or a suit coat or a jacket, you don't have to take it off. And the biggest differentiator for us is we're detecting metallic and non-metallic threats. So you've all been through the typical metal detectors that are out there today, and these advanced metal detectors, they're doing metal. So we're looking for any type of anomaly that could be on the body. So that includes those 3D printed guns, those ghost guns, liquids, plastics, or powder explosives. So, I mean, if someone had a suicide vest on with plastic piping, we would be able to detect that. And again, you don't have to divest those common items. So, we understand the concept of operations, and we understand, what the customers will be looking for kind of an ease of use and for a customer experience. So just briefly on how the technology works. So again, we're emitting an RF signal or millimeter wave. It's very safe, low power. It's safer than Wi-Fi and your cell phone. It's at 6 to 10.6 gigahertz. So we emit that RF signal, and then we have a bank of detectors that are capturing that information. And we're doing this in real time as you're walking through. So we're taking a 3D video rate image of the person as they're walking through. And you can see we get a lot of data points. So, we're doing this at close to 40 frames per second. So it's fast. We have the compute power, and we have the software and the algorithm that's been trained to look for these objects, for the shape, for the density, how they reflect. And we use AI then to automatically detect if it's a threat or not a threat. And then the interpretation goes to a screen, a monitor, and you can see there, it's just a red light, green light. So we'll say there's a threat, it's on the hip of the person or the back of the person. So that helps the operator to do an alarm resolution very quickly. And then it's very open on the back end. So we can tie into the video surveillance system, we can tie into access control, we could tie into their full database. If you want to have, gates, from an access control standpoint, where you go through the system and then you have gates open up, we can do that. And the imaging can, doesn't have to be at the system itself. It can be remote in location. So we've had a lot of interest from large corporations that want to screen their employees coming in for threats, but don't necessarily want to address them at that point, and when they could address them later. So, why Liberty Defense? And, so we have the technology that is proven. So the millimeter wave is not a science experience. It's a proven technology. Again, it's used, at the airports today for the body scanners. So there's a lot of research that's been done, a lot of development that's been done behind it, and it's very good at detection capability, and it's fast and it's safe. And for us at Liberty, that's, security is paramount. I mean, and that's what we do day in and day out. That's our mission, to provide security, to do it effectively. And, we consider, what we're looking at, from prohibitive items and the expansion of the threats. It's not just for today, but it's for tomorrow. So we look at it as being future-proof and, being able to get the hardware into a customer's hands. And we can continue to develop the technology from a software perspective and algorithm. So as these threats evolve, we can actually update the software capability and, transfer that to the customer over the airwaves. So, for example, we've had somebody who wants to find small guns or bear spray or mace or specific liquid explosive drugs. So we can update the algorithm to specifically look for that and then send that to the customer. And, it is driven by AI capability. So it's a continuous learning process, and the AI sometimes can actually be better than the human eye. So, we're excited by the advancements we've made by being able to use the AI capability with our algorithms. And then, I just mentioned, from an operational requirement, we've been in this business for 30 years, so we understand, outside of having security be paramount, you need throughput, ease of use, lack of touch time, and the mobility of the system. And I'll touch on that in a little bit. MIT and Pacific Northwest National Labs, major laboratories, probably most well-renowned in the world, have come to Liberty Defense to be able to commercialize the technology. The TSA is investing in Liberty for the enhanced detection performance, and I'll talk a little bit about the contracts we have with them and the future we have going with them. Separately, we have a partnership agreement with Smiths Detection, where they are going to be the distributor for the Hexwave technology in the US, Canada, and Latin America. Smiths is a global security and detection business, billion-dollar business, multi-billion-dollar business, and they chose Liberty Defense to be the on-person screening capability for them and to distribute in the Americas. And again, we're doing the manufacturing here in the US in our Boston facility, and we have contract manufacturers lined up because we know and we see the demand for the growth of the technology. So this is kind of the key slide for us, and mention, we're now in sales. So I'll break this up, in a little bit because there's very key market drivers here, but I'll touch first on the TSA and the technology. So about a year ago, we submitted a competitive bid to the TSA specifically for on-person screening capability for the aviation workers at US airports. We won the contract. We were the only ones to win that contract. So TSA invested $500,000 to help develop the Hexwave technology. And, that got, to the point of looking at prohibitive items, looking at those liquids and gels and powders, that could do significant damage. The important thing here to understand is the employees at airports in the US are not screened today. And there's background checks, they're low risk. So they, will have a key card and biometric to get access from landside over to airside. And so TSA understands this as a big gap in the security. They've been working on a protocol for the last several years, obviously with this contract. And so, we're at the forefront working with them on this next generation capability. And recently, TSA issued a mandate. It's a security sensitive document, but the mandate basically says that the airports and the airlines need to start screening employees effective September 25th of this year. So really next week. So again, this has been a couple of years in the making. We have done several demonstrations over the last couple of months at major airports utilizing the Hexwave technology, because as part of the mandate, eventually, probably within the next 12 months, the airports will have to start screening for explosive detection capability for their airports, which is why we have the contract with TSA, and the Hexwave obviously meets that capability of explosive detection. So we've been at LAX, we've been at Oakland Airport, Charlotte, which was actually outdoors, Manchester, Boston, Atlanta. We're going to be at LaGuardia shortly, Denver Airport. We worked with Delta Airlines, and there's many others that we've been working with. And we anticipate that these airports will be looking to Liberty and the Hexwave technology for their employee screening initiative. So that's coming up. That's going to be a big driver for us in 2024. And, that's why we've got our third-party contract manufacturers lined up to meet that demand. From a current sales perspective, we announced recently that we won an award from Los Alamos National Labs for 2 systems. Los Alamos National Labs is part of Department of Energy. They do highly classified work, top secret initiatives. If some of you saw the movie Oppenheimer, you'd see that they were part of that going back into the 1940s, where they were involved in the development of the atomic bomb. So you can understand the level of work that they do. They, being Los Alamos, came to visit us here in the Boston office. They saw the Hexwave technology. They saw the capability, the image performance, how the AI would work. And so they decided to buy 2 systems. with the anticipation of buying several more. And just to give you an example of what they're looking for is not only screening for people as they come in, the employees as they come into their facility, but when they leave the facility, they're not allowed to have any data recording devices, USB cameras. So, you know, it's a multi-faceted technology system that we have, and we'll be able to look as the employees leave, because that's critical for them being a top secret facility. So that was an exciting win for us. Toronto Airport Authority will be the first airport, certainly in Canada, to deploy these systems. We'll be delivering those next month. They did some trials for the system, not only employee screening, but they were also screening as passengers were coming into the terminal. So again, we go back to, you know, where's the threat, where's the vulnerability? And, you know, it is at any type of checkpoint or entrance application. So the mobility of the HexWave, it's on wheels, so they can move it from one location to the next, which is a huge competitive advantage for us. And, you know, it's really plug and play. So Toronto has their sights set on using it for multiple different access points, and they're investing in the technology, and we're in discussion with them about, you know, some additional partnerships. So that's how much they believe in the technology. We sold systems to Elkhart County Courthouse, which is in Indiana, and there's new mandates coming out for screening of employees. So you think about, you know, what's being used in the prison system as currency, and that's cigarettes, that's drugs, that's money, in addition, you know, to somebody having a gun or a knife. And again, that's the competitive advantage we have over what's happening with the metal detectors. I mentioned Smith's Detection. They bought 5 systems. We'll be delivering to them. Lenev US, very successful in the courthouses and prison systems, screening for the prisoners. They don't have a technology that would screen the employees, so that's where our partnership comes in. And we sold our first system into Europe with a company called Grasp in Amsterdam. And, you know, they have several different companies where we're looking to do a full integration, full capability at a checkpoint, which would be automated process for that capability. And then we'll be delivering a system to TSA. And as mentioned, we have several other quotes and applications that are out there today, which we look to close in the next 30 days. And again, kind of very exciting time for us, being, you know, shifting from that engineering to actually now deploying systems in the field. So this just gives you an idea on the different customer verticals that have actually reached out to us and we have been in communication with, and this is just a subset of them. But, you know, we've been at universities, we've hosted the Israeli Prime Minister's office in our Boston facility two times, and they're looking to actually use the HexWave maybe in a van or wherever the Prime Minister goes, to be able to screen anybody who would be coming in or visiting the Prime Minister. So we're working on a program with them. Federal Reserve banks we've been talking to. We hosted the head of Major League Baseball security here. He's actually been to visit us a few times, and some other Major League teams. So we're very much involved with all these different applications and opportunities, religious centers, schools, airports, railways, warehouses, for theft prevention. So I think you can get the sense of the broad market capability and demand for the technology. And this is just a setup that we had here at LAX, just to kind of show you how it's being used and where the employees would go through a separate entrance. And it's a very simple setup that they can use. And again, with the mandate coming up September 25th, we are expecting a much greater demand for the technology in the next coming months. And the big thing with the employee screening initiative, if you're using a metal detector, or if you're using something like a hand wand or trace, that's very manually intensive. And so the airports can't afford to do that. So they're looking to get the technology in place that can do it automatically, meet the mandate, meet the requirements for employee screening. And just to show you just a couple, I won't spend any time here, but we can fit into very small access points, small rooms, indoors, outdoor capability. And we've had these successful deployments over the last 9 months. So I'm just going to wrap up on the slide presentation and open it up for questions, but I want to shift from the HexWave to a more recent technology development that we have. And I mentioned the fact that, at L3, we designed and developed the body scanners at the airports that you put your hands up in. We now at Liberty Defense have a sole source contract and an exclusive license from Pacific Northwest National Labs to develop an upgrade kit for all those body scanners at the airport. So TSA has already given us a contract award for $1.8 million. We have several other proposals into them, which we anticipate getting awards within the next 10 days. Their fiscal year end is September 30th. So we're working very closely with them on this program. And it's a 12-month development. And if you look at the image on the top there, what we are doing at Liberty is we are going to change out the inside, the guts, the hardware, the arms that if you've been in one of those systems, you know that the arms rotate around you. So we are upgrading those masts and the detectors. And what that does for TSA and for the passengers, it increases the throughput, increases the detection, lowers the false alarm rate, so there's less touch time, and improves the overall experience for passengers who are going through to the airport and go through that checkpoint. So again, it's a 12-month program we have ongoing with TSA. The TSA just announced this open architecture platform, which means that the companies like Liberty Defense will work with other vendors. So we're working with companies like Sandia National Labs, Nobilis, Telesecurity Sciences to put this full integration together versus going to one vendor. So this is, there's 1,000 units in the US and 1,000 more. So TSA has a 7-year roadmap to do these upgrades in the system. And we're working very closely with them on this program. But, this is a 100 million plus opportunity that we saw coming in 2025.
That's awesome. We got a few minutes left here, and I certainly have some questions. We got some questions from the audience here. What's the lifetime, or what's the business model here? Are you selling the hardware and then a recurring revenue model? And while you're talking about that, what's the estimated lifetime value of a device to your company?
Yeah, so great question, Arlen. So yes, there is a very good recurring revenue that we would anticipate, and that's for the maintenance and support of the system and the software upgrades. So we would sell the hardware, and mentioning, kind of that future-proof capability, we'll continue to adapt to the threats and do software upgrades. So we would anticipate on an annual basis, somewhere in 10 to 15% of the, price of the system. So we sell the systems for just under $100,000. So that recurring revenue every year is going to be in that $10,000 to $15,000 range from a revenue stream perspective. And the life of the systems, I would anticipate close to 15 years. There's no moving parts on the HexWave. So very good from an operational availability perspective and performance. So all the parts are very, common. It's not machine shopped. So easy swap in and swap out.
I got just a question here. Is the incentive from the corporations and from the government truly about safety, do you think? Or do you think it's about money, saving time, or programs, like creating jobs? Like, what do you think the real incentive behind this movement towards safety is?
Yeah, so I think it is on the security aspect, but you have to take into consideration all those other factors. So you have to take into consideration, the throughput and the ease of use and the ease of setup. But, from our perspective, and that's a passion that drives everyone here, is we know we're developing a technology that is going to provide safety and security. And, it's unfortunate, as we started to talk about, it's at places we go every day, in public, areas. So I do think it's driven by the safety perspective and the security and detection, but at the same time, understanding kind of the other human factors that go along with it.
Yeah. Now you're certainly going after like stadiums, airports, schools. Is the sales cycle the same for all of them? Like, a school will probably only need one or two, but are you going to be spending the same amount of time trying to close the sale as a large airport who may want 10?
Yeah, and so that's why we build up our distribution network, right? And that's why we're teaming up with Smiths, and we have a few others lined up in very specific market verticals, so they can go out, in addition to our own salespeople, but that they can go out and develop those relationships and put in the time and effort. But you're right, a school may be one or two systems. They may look for a leasing program versus an airport like LAX that might need 20 plus systems,
And then they still have to get that funding from the government.
That's right.
So it is a long process.
Yeah. The commercial ones are much easier, more direct. They have a plan in place. They know what they need, and so that's an easier process.
Yeah. Okay. And so I see that you're in the middle of a financing right now.
Yes.
Okay. And that's obviously just going to be for inventory and for purchase orders and general working capital and growing your sales.
Exactly right. And we're doing a life offering, so up to $5 million, and we know this, the demand is going to hit. So that's exactly right. We want to be able to be prepared from a working capital and inventory perspective so that we can deliver systems. We're building up the first 30 here, which we've already had, the inventory in, and we're doing that. But so we're looking to go beyond that.
Yeah. Okay.
And do a little marketing on top of that as well.
Yeah. Okay. So we got to wrap up here. We got a lot of people on the call. That financing is on the system through Canaccord and all the big brokerage houses. It is free trading. It does come with a warrant, I believe. If you like that story, I'm sure you can reach out to your investment advisor and participate in that. So Bill, thanks so much for your time. Great story. Great meeting you face to face. Thanks so much. And you certainly executing, which is nice to see.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Arlen. Appreciate it.